Good morning, everybody. I can't even do it. I tried to be cool, but it's not going to work. All right, let's try it again. You ready? What should I say?
What does Elvis say?
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today for House Party Church on the day of August the 9th, 2020. Hashtag House Party Church. Welcome to Madison Hills Christian Church. We're glad you're here. So I wrote you a song. About House Party Bingo, and it goes like this. Nope, wrong song. Hold on. House Party Bingo is actually called Party People Bingo. Bingo! What'd you think?
Needs one more bingo at the end and then perfect.
Okay. So don't forget, if you have not started your team's Party People Bingo in your household with your family, it is going on right now. The more times you get 5 in a row, the more chances you get to win a t-shirt. But bigger than that, the more times you get 5 in a row, the more parties you help us throw across our city, across our county, in the midst of coronavirus, in the midst of all of the craziness. We want to make sure that we have a chance to celebrate people and celebrate life like Jesus would want us to. Okay. Even though we're online right now, I wanted to encourage you to remember at Grace Now, if you want to drop off goods and staples and non-perishable items, you can drop them off at church, you can drop them off in the office. Remember our friends at Grace Now as we continue to serve our friends in our community.
Breathe on me, breath of God, breathe on me. Breathe on me, breath of God, breathe on me. Oh, I come alive, I'm alive when you breathe on me. I come alive, I'm alive when you breathe on me. Awake, awake, awake my soul. God resurrect these bones from death to life for you alone. Awake my soul. Speak to me, word of God, speak to me. Speak to me, word of God, speak to me. I come alive, I'm alive when you speak to me. Oh, I come alive, I'm alive when you speak to me. Awake, awake, awake my soul. God resurrect these bones from death to life for you alone. Awake my soul. Awake, awake, awake my soul. God resurrect these bones from death to life for you alone. Awake my soul. Awake, awake, awake my soul. God resurrect these bones from death to life for you
Every week at House Party Church, we talk to you about Party People Bingo. We talk to you about communion. We sing some songs together. But we want to remind you that this is a great time and a perfect opportunity for you to log into the Church Center app or to go online, MadisonHills.org, or drop a check in the mail to help support the ministry that we're doing here at Madison Hills. We've still got parties to throw. We've still got plans of what we're doing. We still continue to do the work of our church, even though we're not meeting in our building. And so we ask that you would pray and continue to pray for us and give financially to help support our ministry and our mission at Madison Hills to help people find and follow Jesus.
All creatures of our God and King, lift up your voice and with us sing. Oh, praise Him, Alleluia. Thou burning sun with golden beam, thou silver moon with softer gleam. Oh, praise Him, oh, praise Him, Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Thou rushing wind that art so strong, ye clouds that sail in heaven along. Oh, praise Him, Alleluia. Thou rising moon in praise rejoice, the lights of evening find a voice. Oh, praise Him, oh, praise Him, Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Let all things their Creator bless, and worship Him in humbleness. Oh, praise Him, Alleluia. Praise, praise the Father, praise the Son, and praise the Spirit, three in one. Oh, praise Him, oh, praise Him, Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia.
One of my favorite shows on Netflix is Last Chance U. It is this is the 5th season of Last Chance U. It's a show about junior college football teams, and I love it. I don't recommend it if you have sensitive ears because the language is terrible. I just plug my ears for that part. But it's one of my favorite shows because I have for 14 of the last 19 years been somehow involved in football, whether it's playing or coaching, or these days I don't have time to coach, so I'm just a consultant and I go down to the sidelines on Friday night and stand around. And but I love football. It's one of my favorite things. And Last Chance U highlights what my favorite thing about football is. And it's not necessarily the endless strategy. It's not necessarily the practices and the heat. It's the heart of the kids that are playing. And that's one of the things that's always been my favorite, is building the relationships with my teammates or the kids on my team. And I love it. And that's one of the things that I think Last Chance U really highlights, is it shows the heart of these kids. And it's all about kids who are in community college playing football. And the reason it's called Last Chance U is because these are kids who didn't have the grades or had some behavior issues or couldn't quite make it at a Division I level, but they're talented enough to be good enough to play community college football. And it shows their story, and it shows you kind of how they follow their journey as they struggle through school, and they get this education and they play football at a community college. And one of the things that has always kind of been a struggle for me as I watch this show is these kids who have a chance to go to college for free, these kids who have a chance to get to play football, the only thing they seem to want is they seem to think that this is going to be their ticket to the NFL. And it's hard for me to watch because these boys are getting a decent education at a community college. They're building up a chance to maybe go on to college, or at least in community college get an associate's or a certificate to get a chance or an opportunity to make life better. But all they seem to be focusing on is whether or not they can make it to the NFL. They don't care about the statistic that says 0.09% of high school football players will play in the NFL, and that's even just for 1 year. And the statistics of making it beyond 1 year are astronomically even lower. And so all they do is they put all their hope in the eggs and in the basket, all their eggs in the basket of the NFL. And they're missing out on the fact that they're getting an education and they have a chance to better their future, to better their family, and to really build on this and become something that they never would have thought. They keep putting their hope in the wrong thing. And I don't know anyone else who does that, though, so we're good, right? Nobody else puts all of their hope in one thing that they think will fix all of their problems. Nobody else puts all of their hope in one product. Nobody else puts all of their hope in one chance and one opportunity. Nobody else puts all of their hope in a political party or in a job or in a school or in a chance or in an acceptance or an application or a business. None of us do that, right? Today, in part 2 of The Bridge, we're talking about moving from being hopeless to being hopeful. And it's 2020, and everybody knows that it's been hard. Everybody knows that it's been tough. And I think one of the things that gets us through is hope. But what keeps happening is we keep putting our hope in the wrong things. This week, I got a text message spam that said I could lose up to 400 pounds in the next year. I don't want to lose the whole 400 because that would drop me to about a negative 130, and that seems pretty unhealthy. But it's one of those things I would like think about how marketers, all they want to do is put your hope in something that's going to let you down. You can't lose 400 pounds in a year. You can't just randomly get everything you ever wanted. You can't fulfill your hopes and dreams. You can't do those things. And a lot of times what happens is we put our hope in something and we think it's going to move us from hopeless to hopeful. We think it's going to cross that bridge from hopeless to hopeful, but what happens is it just lets us down. There's a story, even before the days of Lewis and Clark, of Sir Alexander Mackenzie. And Sir Alexander Mackenzie wanted to go from Fort Chipewyan to the Pacific Ocean. And he thought that this river he had found was going to be the river that led him there. Thought it was going to be the river that took him to his hopes and dreams, that they could find a way to get all the way to the Pacific from where they were. But when they ended up at the end of this expedition, this dangerous, long voyage, they found themselves not in the Pacific, but in the Arctic. And Mackenzie named the river of Disappointment. You see, Mackenzie had all of his hopes in the baskets of finding the Pacific Ocean, and he was disappointed. Nowadays, though, if you go to Canada, you'll find the Mackenzie River in Canada because of how important the Mackenzie River is to the Canadian people. But Mackenzie was disappointed because it wasn't quite what he thought it was. And you know this feeling. I mean, you know what it feels like to put all of your hopes in the job. You know what it feels like to put all of your hopes in the education, to put all of your hopes into getting into this college, to put all of your hopes into maybe the virus will go away, and to maybe this will happen, maybe that will happen, and it comes up empty. And you know how this feels. You know how hard this is, how difficult it seems to be for this to really happen. And here you are yet again, August 8th, August 9th, hopeless, bored, upset. And today when we talk, I want to talk about how to cross that bridge from hopeless to hopeful. And you know, right? Like you're like, I've been to church before, dude. I've heard the story. You're going to tell me to put my hope in Jesus. I get it. I put my hope in Jesus. I asked him to cure my aunt and he didn't. I put my hope in Jesus. I asked him to give me this and he didn't. And I hear you because I've been there. And I've been through the pain and I've been through the uncertainty and I've been through the problems that come when we ask Jesus for what we want and it doesn't seem like he answers the way we thought he would. And it seems like, you know what, just like that product that was promised to me, just like that thing that was offered to me, it's just another sales pitch that's not going to come through. But I want to talk today about how for us, I think a lot of times the issue comes from us putting our hope not in Jesus, but in what we want Jesus to do. You see, I think a lot of times for us, what we want Jesus to do is what we would have done anyway. What we want Jesus to do is what we want to do. But what we miss is that Jesus, being all God and all man, Jesus being a part of the Creator God, Jesus has a much grander plan than just what our life is. Right? Because we wanted Jesus to rescue our graduation this spring. We wanted Jesus to help us still have that wedding. We wanted Jesus to fix this problem or that problem. We wanted Jesus to do this, that, and the other thing. And so what happens is we get disappointed because Jesus didn't answer our prayer the way we wanted him to. And we find this, one of the interesting stories about people who put their hope in Jesus but got disappointed is the story of two ladies named Mary and Martha. You've heard of them before. There's a couple different times where they show up. Mary and Martha are sisters, and Mary and Martha have a brother named Lazarus. And their brother Lazarus is ill. And they know that he's ill, and they know that Jesus is nearby, and they know that Jesus has been healing people, Jesus has been saving people, Jesus has been raising people, Jesus has been doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they're like, hey, you are our friend, you are someone we know, you should be able to fix this problem. But Jesus doesn't show up like they wanted him to. In fact, if you want to look in John chapter 11, we see that on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus has already been in the tomb for 4 days. And Bethany is less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Mary and Martha to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. And so we meet this story, we see this story, and there's a couple interesting things here to notice. Number one, they had asked Jesus to come and to rescue Lazarus, and he doesn't come. In fact, John makes it clear, Jesus waited 4 days. We think part of the reason Jesus waited 4 days when he could have come earlier is that he wanted to make it clear. The Jewish people had a belief in that day and age. They had a belief that the soul of a person would stay around the body for 3 days, hoping to be brought back to life, and then after the 4th day it was gone. So Jesus waited until the 4th day so that the Jewish people understood this wasn't just something that the Jewish people superstitiously believed. This was a miracle from God. The second thing I think we need to notice is we need to notice that when somebody died in the first century in the Middle East, in this day and age, in Bethany and Jerusalem, they didn't have a private, quiet funeral. That there were mourners who would come from dozens and if not hundreds of miles to mourn and weep and wail loudly, to pray and to cry and to cause what we would consider a scene. But that was how they mourned. That was how someone was honored, was through tears. Okay. The third thing to notice is that Mary stays home. And I would tell you that Mary stays home because Mary's mad. Mary had asked Jesus specifically, heal my brother. Mary had asked Jesus specifically, please save my brother from dying, and Jesus doesn't. And there are times where people have this happen, where people go through this in their life, where they ask Jesus for something and Jesus doesn't come through like they wanted him to. And so they're going to stay home and be mad. And so if that's you, I want you to know you're not alone. The Mary, who's a hero in the scriptures, Mary, who's one of the women who regularly shows up, who regularly is pointed to as a person of faith, Mary is mad at Jesus and won't come see him. I think Martha's frustrated too. I think Martha just shows her frustration in a different way. But I think it's the same story. Martha said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. And I think even in there, you can hear some of the range of emotions where she's angry. And she's like, if you would have been here, if you would have saved him, you could have done this. And she's frustrated and she's hurt. And that happens, right? Like you put your hope in anything and it lets you down. Even if you put your hope in Jesus to do what you wanted him to do, it doesn't work the way you wanted and you're upset. What happens next is kind of interesting because she goes through this transition where in that one sentence she realizes, you know what, I'm still talking to Jesus here. I'm still talking to God in the flesh. And we'll skip through a couple verses there. One of my favorite verses of all time is John 11:35. It says, Jesus wept, right? It's a really easy one to memorize. But there's another verse in there that's a highlight. And Jesus comes up and he looks at Mary and he's like, listen, your brother will live again. And Mary says, Martha says, I know he'll live again at the resurrection. And Jesus tells her, no, you're looking at the resurrection. He says, your brother is going to live again today. And Jesus says to roll away the stone, and it's one of the highlights of the King James Version when Martha says, sure, Martha says, sir, he's been in there for 4 days. Surely he stinketh. And I just think that's my favorite verse in all of the King James. But what happens next is Jesus comes to Martha and he says, your brother will live again. And she looks at him and she says, I don't know if you know. And this is kind of what happens, I think, for a lot of us when we find ourselves hopeless. When we find ourselves without hope in the midst of a struggle. When we find ourselves without hope in the midst of any kind of thing, is the misery just seems to compound. And she's like, well, so now you're going to make our misery worse by opening the tomb in the first place? Somebody recently said living in 2020 is kind of like going through junior high again, where you're miserable all the time, crying every day, and you seem to keep getting grounded. And I think that's a perfect description of how it feels. But then Jesus changes everything. And he looks at Lazarus and he says to Lazarus, come out. And verse 41 says, they took away the stone. And then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, and his hands and feet wrapped with straps of linen, and the cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. And Lazarus rises from the dead. He walks back out of the very tomb that his sisters had laid him in 4 days before. And the sisters who had felt so hopeless, who had put their hope in Lazarus being healed, had felt so hopeless. And then they realized that Jesus had come to make them hopeful again. They had crossed back to hopeful. And here's something I think it's so interesting. But I think this difference needs to be noted. Jesus doesn't resurrect Lazarus. You see, Jesus resuscitates Lazarus. Because eventually there comes a time in Lazarus' life where he dies. His heart stops beating a second time. His brain stops functioning. He lays down and he is dead. The only person who has been resurrected is Jesus. Because Jesus is nailed to a cross. Jesus is beaten and bloodied. Jesus is beaten and bruised and then dies a death, a criminal's death on a cross. But it's while Jesus is on the cross that he dies and he goes to the tomb and then he rises from the dead again, that he's resurrected because he never dies again. Because the hope that Jesus gives us isn't the hope that he's going to heal us from a sickness. The hope that Jesus gives us isn't the hope that he's going to help our business thrive. The hope that Jesus gives us isn't that things are going to get a little bit better on our next report card. The hope that Jesus gives us once and for all is that he is coming back to create a new heaven and a new earth. That he will save us once and for all from the death that he saw and from the pain and the misery that so many people will experience in hell. That's the hope that he gives. And what happens a lot of times is preachers will tell you, well, Jesus has a plan for your life and it's not going to be hard. Jesus doesn't say that. And preachers will tell you that Jesus is depending on this, that, or the other thing, and then everything's going to be fine. Jesus doesn't say that. What Jesus tells us is that Jesus is giving us the hope of resurrection, that Jesus is giving us the hope that he walked out of the grave and will someday come back to rescue earth. Jesus died so that our hope wouldn't be in marketing, so that our hope wouldn't be in stuff, so that our hope wouldn't be in this earth, on this thing, in our kids. Jesus died so that our hope would be in him rescuing us for eternity. There's an old story of a man who lived in a small town, and his job was to work the train track. And the train track and drawbridge, the train track would cross over a river just like the one behind me. And when a boat would come, he'd have to pull the lever to bring the drawbridge up so a boat could come through. And when a train was coming, he would have to pull the lever to bring the bridge back down so that the train could come through. And the story goes that one Saturday he brought his son out to the train with him, and they were there fishing. And while they were there fishing, he saw that a boat was coming that wasn't scheduled. And he knew there was a train that was also due to come soon, and that's why they were there fishing. And so the train was due to come, but he knew that the boat was coming, and the boat wasn't going to be able to stop. And so he pulls the drawbridge for the boat, and his son is still down fishing, but his son hears the train. And his son knows what dad's job is, and he knows that dad's job is to pull the drawbridge, and he knows that dad's job is to bring the bridge back down. And so now there's a boat coming through, and the drawbridge is up, and there's a train coming, and no one knows what to do. And so the dad starts panicking because the boy is down there, because the drawbridge is up and the train is coming. And so he starts to bring the drawbridge back down, hoping the boat will see it and hoping the boat can stop, because he knows that the train that's coming is a passenger train. And the passenger train has hundreds, if not thousands, of people on it. But as he quickly tries to lower the drawbridge to bring the bridge back down, the bridge gets stuck. And the only way to lower it is for him to hold tight to the lever that he's pulling, and he has to pull it manually, unlike what he usually has to do. And it's at this moment that he looks back down and he sees that his son is gone. And if he knows that if he lets go of the lever, because it's stuck, because it's malfunctioned, he knows that if he lets go of the lever, the drawbridge is going back up. And if the drawbridge goes back up, the hundreds, if not thousands of people who are on the train will die. The hundreds and thousands of people will derail, the train will wreck, it will be a disaster. But he also knows that he can see out of the corner of his eye where his son has fallen in. And he can see out of the corner of his eye that his son had gone up to try and help the drawbridge go back down and to pull the lever that he knew his father needed to pull. And as he's watching his son try to pull the lever, as he's holding on to the lever in his own box, and he's watching his son out on the track, his son falls in. And he falls into the bridge. And now the father knows that one thing is true. The father knows that he has to continue pulling on the lever, because if he leaves the lever, thousands will die. If he leaves the lever to go and rescue his son, thousands will die. But if he holds the lever and the bridge continues to go down so that the train can safely cross, the son will die. And it's a clear choice that he has to make. And it's a clear choice that he either chooses to save his son or he chooses to save thousands of people who are not his son. He either chooses to stop the lever, to pull the bridge back up and to go and rescue his son, or he continues pulling the drawbridge down and he sacrifices his son. And you can see in his agony, you can see his pain as he makes the choice to give up his son for the hundreds, if not thousands of people who are riding the train. This, my friends, is what we put our hope in. We put our hope in a God and a creator who sacrificed his son for the millions and billions of people to have a chance, for millions and billions of people to not perish but have everlasting life, like it says in John 3:16. We put our hope not in a Jesus who can help our business, not in a Jesus who can win us an election, not in a Jesus who can help us get what we want, but in a Jesus who will help us have everlasting life. And so here's what I want you to do. When you feel that hopelessness, when you feel like things aren't better, remind yourself that the bridge from hopeless to hopeful isn't about what you get, isn't about what you can give, isn't about how well things can go, but the bridge from hopeless to hopeful is reminding yourself that this life is not all there is. Is reminding yourself that this life doesn't end. This life is just the beginning. Because God the Father watched from on high as his Son died and cried out in pain, just like the conductor. And God the Father saw his own Son die so that you and I could cross that bridge from death to life, so that you and I could forever cross the bridge from hopeless to hopeful. Today, as you take communion with your family, remind yourselves that God the Father was the Father in the train booth, holding on to the lever, knowing that he was giving up his own Son for you, the passengers on the train. In 2003, a producer in Czechoslovakia made a film, the film that you saw. And you saw parts of it. It's about a 35-minute movie called Most. And I love the beauty of the story. Because what you didn't see in the clips that we showed, what you didn't see is you didn't see the people on the train. On the train, there were addicts. On the train, there were deceitful people. On the train, there were some bad people on this train. It wasn't good folks who are great God-fearing folks who just do good. It was people like you and me. It was people like you and me who don't have it together. And who some of us would say didn't deserve to live. But the Father still sacrificed his Son because he wanted those people to have hope. As you take the bread and take the cup today, remind yourself of the pain and agony of that Father. Remind yourself of the hope of that Father who gave up his Son so that you and I could cross from hopeless to hopeful. Okay, I think...
The highest king would welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. The sun sets free. Oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. The sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
I think we've got everything. Any other shenanigans? You want to do the Macarena?
I don't know if I remember.
One
it.
to the when to the hen when to when when to the one when the hen goes up when one when the hen when the hen goes up when.
Hey, welcome. Said potato twice.
Said potato at least 3 times.